Chapter 8. The Largest Lake in the World. For the next few days, Paddle, along with old logs, chips, and bits of board, drifted on the current of the river. Then the river widened into a bay with many islands. Paddle floated past them all until at last there was no more land anywhere. Paddle was alone on Lake Superior, the largest lake in the world. Only the sky was left, and the sun, and the stars, and the water that slid under him in black valleys or lifted him in blue mountains. He rode over them in foam before they rolled on and away to the edge of the sky. But Paddle was not altogether alone on Lake Superior. One calm evening his canoe shot upward into the air. It splashed down, only to be spanked upward again. The glassy eyes of a great fish gazed at him from below, then disappeared. It had struck at the shiny tin of the rudder, but Paddle was not food. Another evening a small warbler swooped down from above and sat on the canoe all night, tipping Paddle half over. Exhausted by its flight across the huge lake, the little bird had found a resting place just in time. At sunrise, it flew away on its journey. Fish swam under Paddle. Gulls soared over him. Ships slid across the horizon, leaving black smoke trails. Everything was going somewhere, everything except Paddle. He seemed to be sitting in one place, rocking up and down. Yet all the time he had been traveling. Currents had carried him around the shores of the beaver pond. Now they carried him in Lake Superior in the same way. Paddle, now drifting westward, would someday circle eastward again, guided by the shore currents. Steadily and surely they pushed him on toward the sea. Chapter 9. Paddle crosses two borders. One night Paddle passed the dim shapes of islands. Morning found him in wide Thunder Bay. Big ships came near, churning the water into green froth and tossing Paddle over and over in their waves. A bumpy line of buildings stretched like castles along the horizon. They were grain elevators at Port Arthur and Fort William, filled with mountains of grain which trains had brought from the plains of western Canada. The ships now passing Paddle would carry the grain to other lake ports and other lands, to be made into bread and buns and breakfast foods for millions of people. A breeze whipped out of the north, driving long waves before it. Driftwood followed the waves. A cedar stump came galloping up to Paddle and hooked him between two limbs. Its roots stuck up in the air, making a sail, which carried Paddle briskly on his way for days, until at last Paddle and the ferry boat were tossed onto a beach. They had crossed an international border, though there was nothing to show for it. They had left Canada and entered the United States. The cedar stump lodged in the sand, shaking Paddle free to ride up and down the beach in foaming surf. Along this beach was a mound of sand, which kept the water of a marsh from running into Lake Superior. One long wave heaved Paddle over this barrier and into a lagoon. Tangled forests formed the marsh's other borders. Lily pads lay on the surface, and Paddle's canoe landed on one of them. It was very quiet. The air smelled of mint and wintergreen and pine needles. Paddle had come to rest after 2 months on restless waves. Chapter 10. Life in a Northern Marsh. The marsh was alive. Dragonflies and butterflies danced in the sun. Turtles lay in rows like buttons on the old logs, and frogs, frightened by stalking herons, leaped in all directions. The downy babies of wild ducks pecked eagerly at bugs. Woodpeckers, kingfishers, and ruffed grouse made their busy noises. A cow moose with her calf splashed in the lagoon to drive off flies. Near Paddle, a bull moose, now growing new antlers, was feeding on the roots and stems of water lilies, with his head far under water. He jerked the lily pad from under Paddle's canoe and set him free to be pushed about on the pond by the wind. Days passed. When it was sunny, squirrels chattered in the pines and chipmunks scolded from high rocks. But they were silent, and the ducks moved to safety on the day that a mother bear and her twins came to romp in the water. The cubs caught crayfish and frogs in the mud, while the mother bear squatted on a rock beside a deep pool in the lagoon and smacked a black bass to the bank with her paw. After this picnic, all three ripped open rotted stumps for grubs and beetles. Paddle might have been caught in the marsh for life, but one evening no stars came out. Thunder crashed, and lightning split the night with fire. A wet owl flapped madly for shelter in the forest. Ducks squawked and gathered their babies under mossy banks. A water-soaked muskrat waddled wetly into a hollow log and sat down with a very sour look. The rain made a thick curtain. The pond rose inch by inch. Part of the sandy mound along the brook gave way. Torn lily plants, loose wood, and islands of watercress raced out to Lake Superior. Paddle was again on his way to the sea.